Welcome to Azshara's Eternal Palace, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at Lady Splashvane on Heroic, on the Arms Warrior once again, and to start things off, we're going to go ahead and pre-pot and pre-cast our Mechagon trinket, because even after the nerfs recently, it is still my best-in-slot trinket at the moment. Well, not best-in-slot, but the best simming trinket I have. So we're going to go ahead and start off with that, and then go right into Memory of Lucid Dreams on our charge, and get that rolling with Warbreaker for a nice big juicy Test of Might buff to start things off. And with Memory of Lucid Dreams, as you noticed, Test of Might falls basically exactly right as Warbreaker comes off cooldown once again. So we've got a nice flow to our rotation to keep up good single target damage on Ashvane here. And we are saving Lust for a little bit later on in the fight. Now, right there, we have the swirls that drop on the ground, and they throw you up in there and do a little bit of damage. You can actually cheese them for a little bit of rage. I'm going with that anyway, I didn't just stand on it. And then we're going to go ahead and take all of our briny bubble people, the people that get the circles around them on the outside. We're going to move them in front of the boss because we're moving in a counterclockwise pattern around the outside of the room here. And we want them all to be stacked up as much as possible, that way the melee can cleave, and ideally we cleave the boss with the bubbles. And if you get stuck in one of those, you can't really do anything, so the more, the less downtime we have in those bubbles, the better. So we're going to move those out and cleave those down. And this next mechanic here, we get the C marks. I don't actually know what this is called. I get the green one here, and this breaks the coral with the laser beam between two people. And I saw the other green person, I'm not sure who it was, that I saw the raid icon, and he moved out behind me there, so I knew I could stay in melee range, and he's going to base his coral line off of my position, so as long as I just stay still there on the boss, it'll be fine. Now, unfortunately, one of our raid members messed up here and bubbled a lot of people. I'm not actually sure how I didn't get caught in that. I figured when it threw him up in the air there, it would have, bubbled him up in the air. I guess those people got thrown up as well. I wasn't actually paying attention if they got thrown up in the air at the exact same time. Either way, we're going to go ahead and cleave them all out with Warbreaker and get that rolling. The normal people, the other two people that took it out properly, they moved off to the side. Unfortunately, they were a little bit late getting broken out, punished by an error there. But not too much DPS loss for, the raid. Great for me, obviously, because I can just go ahead and cleave everything. Those coral that spawn around the room, they shoot bubbles out that'll connect to the boss, which gives her this extra absorption shield. There's one on the right there. We're going to be soaking those as much as possible while moving her around. You don't see it a whole lot, but all the ranged and the healers behind me are doing this the majority of the time. If any of them get through, then the melee take it. And these coral patches, I guess they're not really kelp, but coral patches around the outside of the room, we're going to constantly be moving out of it. It just does some light ticking damage if you're in it. It's not super dangerous. We got to squeak in front of the boss there just slightly to get out of that splash up and avoid the bubbles. Otherwise, if you're in that circle, you'll get bubbled as well, of course. I opted to go ahead and use Blade Storm there because I didn't have a whole lot of rage to play with, and there were like 4 people. Somebody got clipped on the other side there by the bubbles, so I wanted to get those people broke out as fast as possible. And then we're going to follow it up, as per normal rotation. Now, she is getting down a bit low here. We went through the first bubble, or does she start with that? I can't remember. But we're getting down to almost breaking the first, what's it called? Carapace. It's her shell thing that is the overheal. Now, if you have enough DPS, you can actually do this fight in a couple of phases, but most guilds, I imagine, depending on your raid size, I guess, for Heroic, are probably going to do it in 3 phases. And that's where Arms is really going to shine, or Warriors in general. Is if you can convince your guild to stretch it out into 3 phases, or if you just don't make the DPS check like we didn't to get it into 2 phases. Like I said, I imagine this scales, depending on your raid size quite a bit, but we're going to go ahead and use Warbreaker right here, and these huge bursts of damage going out on the raid behind us from Dispels, I believe. Something the healers are dealing with. And we're going to go ahead and walk through this coral patch, taking some damage, but as you see there, it hits for like 17k every second or so. It's not super dangerous, so if you have to move through it, not a big deal. Right here, I did make an error. I believe it was right there. I had the red line laser debuff, and I didn't see who else had it. It was our tank on the other side of the boss. so I didn't know where it was, and I didn't move out like I should have to get the coral broke behind me. I could have leaped out, broke some, and then, you know, charged back in, so gotta watch out for that next time. But before I use my second memory of lucid dreams there, Warbreaker was almost up, and I've had some people ask me about this, like if you should save it, and I wouldn't save it if it's any longer than like well, any time at all, really. Like I had 10 seconds up on memory, and my Warbreaker was up. You get it back so fast because of how much rage you're spending, especially during the end of the fight here, that you don't really need to hold it. You can just go ahead and Warbreaker and keep it rolling and then use it again the next time it comes up. So this is the third phase I was talking about. We get her down to 14%, and she still applies her huge absorption shield. Nothing to panic about. This is where we bloodlusted on the second one, actually. I forgot to point out, to try and get her health down as much as possible to prevent this from happening, but we got here anyway with a ton of health to spare on 14%, so we weren't going to make it anyway. And at this point, with this huge absorption shield, arms doesn't matter because I can still execute her because her true health is actually below 20%. So, you know, this is like a 2-minute phase during the end here that you're literally just spamming execute as an arms warrior. And that might not sound like fun to some people, just pressing one button, but I don't know, with Memory of Lucid Dreams right now, getting so much rage refund back, and then when the cooldown's up, getting an insane test of might buff, I actually enjoy this, so I thought it was a ton of fun just spamming execute for 2 minutes straight. We had those people move out. As you notice, the outer edge of the room, is completely covered in this coral now. We're going to go ahead and walk through it, and we're just kind of going in a spiral towards the center of the room. These bubbles are getting really close now. We're just doing our best here to you know, keep them away. Everybody eventually squeaks out on the side with those bubbles. We get them out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and pop sweeping strikes here because I actually burnt my memory during the execute phase there. And as you notice, you actually get Warbreaker up with memory and execute phase before Test of Might actually falls off. So you can overlap Warbreaker with Test of Might, which is just absurd. Like, you're doing 30% on top of the fact that you have like a 10,000 strength buff off of that Memory of Lucid Dreams Test of Might window. So when those bubbles go out, I'm going to opt to Sweeping Strikes and execute onto them rather than Blade Storm, because you're just getting insane value out of this during this last phase. And we're just going to ignore pretty much all the rest of these mechanics. We're not going to move out too much to break things because, you know, the boss is about dead. So that's the turn and burn. And there you have it. There's Arms Warrior for Lady Ashvane on Heroic right now. 36k, you know, that's pretty good for this fight. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, and I will see you next time. Peace.
No, it's not an excuse, but the solution is just to not have that many coral. To not have that many sea plants. Here we go.